How's it going, everybody? And I would like to welcome you to the beginning of our Nexus Dashboard series, where I'm going to be walking you through how to work with Nexus Dashboard and adding the Fabric Controller capability to it. For those of you that don't know how that, if you've never worked with a data center network manager like Nexus Dashboard, it is the successor to Data Center Network Manager, or DCNM. That's the older version of Nexus Dashboard. And the idea is Nexus Dashboard is a base installation, and then you add capabilities to it, Fabric Controller being one of those. There's a couple of other ones like LAN and IP media, things like that. We're going to be using Nexus Dashboard Fabric Controller to automate the deployment of VXLAN fabrics, and then be as a GUI to deploy all of the capabilities on top of a VXLAN fabric. So that's essentially the cusp of what we're going to be trying to do. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through the deployment of the OVA and then the specifics of how to get everything stood up on the fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and click on Register a VM. We're going to deploy an OVA. I'm just going to say this is going to be NDFC, and then I have to choose the file to map to it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this Nexus Dashboard, and then I need to actually let me copy the new version because I want to be able to move stuff over. So this particular version 9.2.3.2, this particular version allows for the importing and exporting of a lot of capabilities, so you'll be able to leverage the CSVs, so Excel spreadsheets, to configure everything. I'm going to go ahead and grab that, click on Open, click on Next. We're going to deploy it on Data Store 1. And then from here, I'm going to choose the VM network as my main management, and the data network is just going to be the lab port group. I just need one there. We're going to be deploying the app version. There is a data, but it takes more. So the app is what we're going to deploy. 16 CPUs, 64 gigs of RAM, 500 gigs of disk. We're going to choose thin provision, and we're going to power on automatically. Click on Next, and then Finish. This will take a moment for it to upload. I'm going to pause until it's done uploading, and then once it uploads, we'll bring you guys back in to start the config. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and refresh this. We're going to open up the console. So now we have to do our initial setup of the NDFC. So we're going to go ahead and click inside the console, press any key, and then the admin password. I'm going to use, it's got to be pretty long, so I'm going to use capital P @SSW0RD1234. Enter key, reissue that. And then what's the management network going to be? I'm going to use 10.255.1.11/24. Gateway is 10.255.1.1. Cluster leader, only one node in the cluster must be the leader. Yes, that's fine. I'm only going to have one node. Re-enter config, no. So it's going to go ahead and do its thing. It takes a couple minutes for this to actually occur. And once it does, it will tell you that everything's looking good. Now that actually says Nexus Dashboard in pound signs. So it's kind of funny how it plays out. But so system up, please wait for UI to be online. This takes about a moment for it to actually do its thing. And once it does, we'll be given a URL to point to log in. So once that occurs, we'll be in pretty good shape. So I'm going to pause until that's there. Alright, so the UI is online, so I'm going to go to that IP address, https://10.255.1.11, and then we're going to click on Advanced, and then we'll be delivered to Nexus Dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and type in our password. There we go. That's the capital P, @SSW0RD1234. I'm going to click on Begin Setup. Now, what I'll have to do here is I'm just going to say cluster 1 NTP server. I have an NTP server, 10.255.1.1. And then my DNS provider is going to be Google. I'll put in here quad 8. If this was an actual deployment, you'd want to put something in local. Now the proxy. Now if you say, it says authentication required for proxy, then you click on advanced settings. Don't worry about this. Just click up here. It says we will connect to Cisco Cloud via proxy. This will allow you to mitigate risk from exposure to non-conformant hardware software in your fabric. I'm going to say skip and click on continue. I'm going to bypass the proxy. And then we have our app network. So this is going to be pod to pod, which is used to run interpod traffic. And then we have service network. There's a virtual subnet used for service level communication within the cluster. So just make sure that you pick 2 different subnets if you need to make a change here that don't overlap with anything else in your environment. Click on next. No detail. Now I'm going to actually go back over here to this guy, click close here, go to the networking tab, and actually for Nexus Dashboard, for the networking I chose lab port group. That'll be fine because that's going to be, lab port group is actually a VM network that I create for communication with inside of like an NSX environment or a data center virtualization environment. That's going to be fine. So I'm actually going to go ahead and click in here. I'm going to call, or down here, the data network, I'm just going to type in here 192.168.1.11/24, and the gateway is going to be 192.168.1.1, and I'm going to say update. Oh, the name is going to be, we'll say node 1. Click update, and then we're going to go ahead and click on next. It says there are insufficient nodes. You should have 3 in order to form a cluster. We're going to say don't worry about that, confirm installation, and then configure. Now what's going to end up happening is this is going to redirect us, once it loads, to a different set of screens, and we're going to be able to watch the installation process. So I'm going to go ahead and come down here. This will take a couple of moments to do its thing. So I'm actually going to mute and let this go, and then you'll see what it looks like. Alright, well, it definitely spoofed me on that one. Normally it'll finish up, but for whatever reason it didn't. Go ahead and log into the UI. Oh, I guess it wasn't done yet. Still working. Alright, well this time it's for real. I'm going to click on Let's Go, and then we have all this. So what they're basically doing here is telling you some of the different variations of what's going on, but I'm going to go ahead and click on Get Started. I'm not going to do any of this here. Click on Done. And what I'm going to have to do is we need to add an app service. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click on this to get out of here. I'm going to drop down from one view to admin console, and I have to go to the operations, infrastructure, here we go, infrastructure, and then cluster configuration. Then down here to routes. So we have our management service IPs and data service IPs. I'm going to go ahead and click here. I'm going to click on this guy here. I'm going to type in this is going to be 10.255.1.12. And then I'm going to add that. And these are going to be for different capabilities that are going to be happening, like SNMP, syslog, that type of stuff. So I just need to add a couple in here. And once they're done, I don't technically need to do anything for data because we're not doing anything right now like endpoint locator or something like that. I'm going to click on Save. And then I'm going to come over here to Services. Now, what you can do is you can go to the, you can say install services. If you downloaded them already, you can upload them, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to click on App Store, and right here you get the Fabric Controller. So I'm going to click on, we have Assurance Engine, we have a connector for HashiCorp for Terraform, and then we've got ServiceNow integration, Data Broker, Insights, and then orchestration if you want to do intersite connectivity and provisioning, things like that. I'm going to click on install for Fabric Controller. We can add them as we want to. And then this one here is going to be, I think this is the highest version too, because it's got the most stuff going on. Click on this. That's going to redirect me to log in. So I'm going to click on next. I'm going to log into my CCO account. And then after that is done, I'm going to go ahead and it's going to allow me to start downloading the app. So this takes a minute for it to authenticate. We have to basically scroll to the bottom here and say agree to download. And then once we do that, then it's going to begin the download process. It takes a minute for it to download and all that type of stuff. But once you do download it, you'll be able to, it'll download, then it'll install, all that stuff. So I'm going to click on refresh. It says downloading. If we go to installed services, we can see that it's downloading. So I'm going to go ahead and just mute. Alright, so now that the installed service is there, we're going to go ahead and click on enable. And then it's going to go ahead and do its thing. It'll enable the Fabric Controller process. And then once the Fabric Controller process has been enabled, the next stage would be to go in and turn on certain services. So it's definitely a multi-step process. I've obviously been through this a few times. But once you get through the majority of the steps, and then you end up getting into the service itself, it pulls you into the Fabric Controller application, and then that's when the rest of the interesting things become dive into it. So I'm not going to be showing you the topology. Matter of fact, I don't have one ready yet for you. I wanted to get through the installation of this first. But once we're here, or once we have all of the Fabric Controller done, this takes a little bit, obviously, to do, but once we're there, I do have a topology in mind that I'm going to be walking you guys through deployment-wise, and we'll get into the operations of getting that all stood up. So I'm going to get out of the way and mute until this is done. Alright, so we are now at the point where everything is up and running. Partially. So the next step we're going to do is click on Open, which is going to redirect us to the UI settings, which is LAN deployment and blah, 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 blah. There's a bunch of information in here that you'll need for communication, but I'm going to just click on Get Started. So we can do Fabric Discovery. We can do Discover Inventory Topology for LAN deployments, which is not what we're doing. We can do SAN Controller for MDS if we're doing storage area networking, which we're not doing, or we can do Fabric Controller, full function, LAN functionality in addition to Fabric Discovery. This is what we want to do. And then when we click on this, we have the Fabric Builder. We can do VMM Visualizer, so visualization of virtual machines, so integration with vCenter, precision timing protocol statistics, media controller for IP fabrics, performance monitoring or perfmon. We can do IPAM for address management, endpoint locator, so we can track IPs, and then if you have Kubernetes, that type of stuff. I am going to do the performance monitor. Actually, I normally do endpoint locator, but I really don't have a way of demoing that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Apply for Fabric Builder. So this is going to take some time to do, and once it starts, this will start here, then it'll start up here, say started here, and if we look here, you'll see a bunch of additional capabilities show up over here. So I'm going to pause until that is completely up and running, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and you notice some features have been updated, so we're just going to click reload the page. And when we do that, you'll start to see this pop up where we need to set the device credentials and stuff like that so we can log into Nexus switches and start to discover them. So I'm going to say set the credentials. I'm going to click on set here. Username is going to be NDFC, and I'm going to set the password capital P @SWRD. That right there. We're just going to copy and paste that right there. Make sure that's going on. Robot selection allows users to appropriate roles. I'm going to click on save and click on OK. There we go. So the default credentials are set. Now, the next stage of our process here, folks, would be to come over here to the Fabrics tab. And right now we don't have any fabrics. We'd have to create a fabric. Now, I'm going to walk you through how to do all this stuff as we go along, but I still have to go into Eve, create the fabric, go through the, bringing up the Nexus 9K switches. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that in the next video and stuff like that. The process isn't difficult. My goal is to have 2 fabrics. We're going to have one fabric that we're going to be doing a lot with, and then we're going to have a second fabric that's going to be a little bit smaller that we'll be joining, and we'll be able to interconnect the two together 2 different ways. One through the 2 different WAN connections just to make sure that we have everything dialed in. I do want to be clear here on a couple of things, that the integration of capabilities, for example, I commonly work with VXLAN fabrics where I have Nexus 9Ks that form direct eBGP peerings to Palo Alto firewalls. And the Palo Alto firewall is the gateway off the network, and which could be off to the internet. It could be a gateway firewall connecting the VXLAN fabric to the rest of the environment, because you want to put a firewall in between your data center fabric and your LAN environment where your users sit, stuff like that. There is no way, at least even I haven't tested in this particular version, that you can add a Palo Alto firewall to a fabric. And what I mean by that is we come over here to actions and you click on create fabric. There's a number of fabric. Let's just say test for this. We're going to click on choose fabric. If I was to come down here to external connectivity network, where it's fabric or core edge router deployments with a mix of Nexus and non-Nexus devices. So I have attempted to do these where I'm doing that, and as of the last time I tested this, a slightly older version, you could never add a Palo firewall to a VXLAN fabric or to an NDFC fabric. So what you would do instead of that is we would add a connection to a pair of, say, ASRs or Cat 8kV, Cat 9kV, or something like that. An iOS device of some type. We would peer outside eBGP to that, and then those devices would connect out to the Palo firewalls. I'll show you what I mean in a topology so you have an actual visual. But like I said, there's never been a way for us to add a firewall directly to it. There is supposedly a way to do it through a bunch of hacking it through services, but I personally haven't been able to get that to work. Meaning that you'd have a service node, you'd come in here and you'd say add, and then you'd create the firewall. Let's say you do test, and then you'd select the fabric that you want to apply it to, the service node, the fabric, the interface, all that type of stuff, and then you would create it as a service device. I haven't seen that effectively operational yet, so it's anybody's guess. I am patiently waiting for integration to other firewall platforms to be kind of a thing where you'd be able to SSH into the firewall and then be able to join it, because you're not looking for it to do any configuration to the firewall, whether it's ASA, firepower, FTD, firepower, Checkpoint, Palo Alto, Fortinet, any of your major firewall vendors. I'm not looking to be able to configure the firewall. I just want to be able to join, do a basic join, and then form an eBGP peering to it. That's really all I'm looking to do. So I haven't tested it in this version. I'm going to test it though, but that'll be further on down the road. So I don't know if I'm actually going to get into service insertion. That is not my goal. No, I don't have any customers that leverage it. So that is kind of the caveat. But I will show you guys how to work with that as we go further on down the road. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch all of you in the next video.